President of the United States stood before the world and announced with unmistakable confidence that Iran's nuclear program had been, and he used one word, obliterated. The bombs had fallen. 7 B-2 stealth bombers had flown 18 straight hours across the globe. 14 of the most powerful conventional weapons ever built, each one weighing 30,000 pounds, had struck Iran's most fortified nuclear sites. The world watched plumes of smoke rise from the mountains of Fordow and Natanz on satellite imagery. And yet, within 48 hours of those strikes, a classified assessment produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency arrived at a different conclusion. According to sources familiar with that assessment, the bombs had not destroyed Iran's enriched uranium. They had not eliminated the centrifuges. At best, the program had been set back, and the phrase used inside the intelligence community was telling a few months. But here is the question that the official narrative still struggles to answer months later. Where is Iran's uranium right now? The IAEA estimates that when Israel launched its first attacks in June 2025, Iran had nearly 441 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, the national, a short technical step from weapons-grade material. And as of today, neither American intelligence nor international inspectors can say with certainty where all of it is. This is the story the headline never finished, and it is the story Ray McGovern's analytical framework was built to examine. Ray McGovern spent 27 years inside the Central Intelligence Agency, rising to prepare the president's daily brief, the single most sensitive intelligence document in the American government. He briefed the highest levels of power during the Cold War. He watched from the inside how intelligence was used, shaped, and sometimes weaponized to justify policy decisions that had already been made before the analysts even sat down. He has spent the decade since his retirement doing the opposite of what most former intelligence officials do. Rather than lending his credibility to power, he has consistently used it to question power, particularly when official narratives and verified facts begin to diverge. McGovern's analytical lens on Iran has always rested on a foundational question, not what governments say happened, but what the evidence actually shows. And on the question of Iran's nuclear program, it has long drawn attention to a gap that the post-strike narrative has never convincingly closed. The gap between the certainty of political pronouncements and the deep uncertainty that persists inside the intelligence and arms control communities. That gap is at the center of this analysis because what happened in June 2025 and what remains unresolved in March 2026 raises questions that go far beyond any single military operation. To understand why the uranium question remains open, one must first understand the geometry of the problem. The uranium enrichment facility at Fordow lies approximately 86 meters underground, while the GBU-57, the Massive Ordnance Penetrator, the United States' most powerful bunker buster bomb, is estimated to penetrate up to 60 meters through rock before detonating. The Sassak Hollow Peace Foundation, read that again. The bomb designed specifically to destroy this facility cannot, under standard conditions, reach the facility. NPR analysis found that when accounting for the coefficient of medium strength rock, the penetration depth of the MAP may be as little as 7.9 meters, while short of the 60 meters claimed in promotional materials and far short of the 80 to 90 meters at which Fordow sits. NPR, the military's answer to this problem was sequential bombing, dropping multiple weapons in succession down the same shaft, each one boring slightly deeper than the last. According to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, 6 B-2 bombers dropped 12 GB uh, 5-7 bombs sequentially on Fordow's two ventilation shafts. Wikipedia, the strategy was to use the ventilation infrastructure as a pathway, not to punch through solid rock, but to send the weapon's blast effect through the mountain's own architecture. Geology, experts noted, can prevent weapons from reaching target depths and can deflect shock waves, hard rock, and structural irregularities, working against even the most precisely guided weapon. And P.R. McGovern's analytical framework, rooted in his experience with intelligence assessments versus political narratives, would recognize this pattern immediately. A technical limitation acknowledged quietly inside the intelligence community, while the public narrative remained one of total success. This is where the story becomes geopolitically significant in ways that extend well beyond the June 2025 strikes. The Financial Times reported that preliminary assessments shared with European governments indicated Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile remained largely intact following U.S. and tribe strikes, and that the material had been distributed to various locations rather than concentrated at the sites that were hit. Factcheck.org US. Vice President Vance and other officials later conceded that they did not know where Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium was, and that it had likely been moved away from Fordow before the strikes. Wikipedia, the IAEA's picture is equally uncertain. Iran has not informed nuclear inspectors about the status or location of its highly enriched uranium since the attacks last June, nor has it allowed inspectors to return to its bombed facilities. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi has assessed that a little over 200 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium is likely stored in a tunnel complex at Isfahan, the only major nuclear facility that appears largely undamaged by the June 2025 campaign. The national around 200 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium would be enough material for approximately 5 nuclear warheads if further enriched to weapons grade levels. Arms Control Association McGovern has long argued that the intelligence community's role is to speak truth to power, not to confirm what power is already decided. The divergence between the DIA's classified assessment, which pointed to minimal long-term damage, and the political declarations of total success, is precisely the kind of gap he has spent decades drawing public attention to. In his analytical framework, the question is never simply, did the bombs land? The question is, did the strategic objective actually get achieved? What remains of particular concern to analysts is the Pickaxe Mountain complex near Natanz, a facility not attacked in June 2025 that may hold centrifuge-related activities or enriched uranium stockpiles, and a second site at Talgan 2 near Parkshan, which poses potential links to nuclear weapons development. Institute for Science and International Security satellite imagery from March 2026 shows that the Talgan 2 site underwent significant reinforcement in the months leading up to recent strikes, being encased in concrete and covered with soil layers. A pattern analyst note also occurred before Operation Midnight Hammer, suggesting Iran has developed a systematic doctrine of pre-strike hardening. Interesting engineering. The lesson Iran is drawing from all of this, and McGovern's analytical framework would be alert to this shift, is not that underground facilities are vulnerable. It is that they need to be deeper, as one nuclear security study concluded as far back as 2005. It is cheaper and easier for a nation to dig deeper than it is for an adversary to penetrate that depth. And PR, each military strike in this reading does not end the nuclear challenge. It educates the adversary in how to make their facilities more survivable. McGovern's perspective has never been purely strategic. Throughout his public commentary and advocacy work, he has returned repeatedly to a concern that rarely appears in military briefings: the human and ecological dimension of what modern warfare actually does to the environment and to civilian populations. IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi noted that while radiation levels outside Natanz remained unchanged after the strikes, significant radiological and chemical contamination had occurred inside the facility, contamination that could be dangerous if inhaled or ingested. Council on Foreign Relations, the facilities struck sit in populated regions of Iran. The communities near Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan live downwind the long-term environmental consequences of strikes on uranium enrichment facilities, where radioactive material, heavy metals, and industrial chemicals are stored in large quantities, remain deeply uncertain and largely unmonitored by any independent body. McGovern has argued throughout his career that the cost of war is almost never fully accounted for in the initial political calculus, that the people who bear the consequences of strategic decisions are rarely the people who make them. The enriched uranium may or may not be in the mountain, but the contamination, the fear, and the human cost, those are not missing. They are simply unacknowledged. Months after the bombs fell on Fordow, the answer to the most important strategic question, where is Iran's enriched uranium, remains officially unknown. The centrifuges may be damaged, the facilities may be inoperable. The program has undoubtedly been set back. But the material at the heart of the concern, the uranium that was the stated justification for one of the most audacious American military operations in a generation, is not confirmed destroyed. It is not confirmed gone. It is, in the clinical language of arms control, unaccounted for. Ray McGovern's life's work has been a sustained argument that intelligence exists to tell us what is true, not to confirm what is convenient. That gap between what was announced and what is known is the gap that matters most. So here is the question worth sitting with. If the objective was never fully achieved, what comes next? If this analysis prompted a different way of thinking about this story, consider sharing it with someone who deserves to hear it.